Hello, I'm Carrie Gard, and welcome back to Tea Time with Tech Marketing Leaders. I am so excited for this show. Oh man, oh gosh, buckle up. I didn't have a plan, but now I have a plan, and I'm really excited about what Leanne and I cooked up for y'all. Leanne did most of the cooking. I was her sous chef, and so it's gonna be a spicy one today. So buckle up. Before I get there, a little bit about our guest, Leanne Dow-Weimer. I'm going to read straight out of her LinkedIn because it's too good. So thank you, Leanne, for doing my job. I appreciate you. She is not a gardener, but she's into growing things. Industry agnostic, customer journey, and outcomes obsessed growth driver is what Leanne is all about. She gets results for companies that she works with, combining full funnel, customer centric strategies with execution. It's based on 8 years of experience in online and offline marketing, involving brand, demand generation, and product marketing, and over 15 more indirect customer service sales roles. Strategically driven growth for B2B and B2C businesses. Things like, I don't know, just over an 800% ROAS, no big deal, and a CAC reducing, by 50%, whatever. She works through problems by combining a macro level approach with micro level execution. She delivers decisiveness and prioritization to create clear roadmaps, even facing uncertainty. Leanne, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I need to have you read all of my stuff. I feel so much better about how it sounds. That was beautiful.
I love it.
Can we have the Carrie audiobook soon?
This is what happens. You know this, right? After reading to your kids for the last however many years, you develop a voice.
It's beautiful. 10 out of 10. I feel so complimented by my own words that I forgot exactly how I phrased.
They're really good words. I may have thrown a little sass in there because I felt like it was warranted, but there we go. There we go. This was a beautiful write-up, and I just connect so much with how you approach marketing because I feel so similar in thinking strategically, but then getting to the execution piece of it and like being able to do both is so powerful in working with businesses to really be able to get them going in such a powerful way. And I could talk about that all day. But before we get into any conversation, we need your story because as lovely as this write-up is, it doesn't tell us your journey of, what you're doing now and how you got there. So lay it on us.
Oh man, this is the hardest part. I am the mechanic that has a broken car. I love fixing things and I'm so good for other people. And my story is one of just killing it at doing things for other people in their marketing and in their sales and in any level that I can. And so when it comes to my story is part hype girl, part, mean mommy or whatever it is, adult in the room that is the one saying, I love your idea. Let's get this done. This is how we do it. And being able to just immediately see this is the steps we need to get there because I know exactly what you said, who you are, and what your pain points are. And that's kind of my superpower. So my story today is that in September 2024, I am actively looking for my next leadership role in marketing, but I'm also taking fractional clients who just need a bite-sized bit of quite a lot of what I am. I am a scrappy generalist. I struggle with staying in my own lane because I don't see things linearly and compartmentalized and siloed. I just don't see it that way. I know that that's going to doom us. And sometimes that involves taking things from this is how we say it in this email or this social post all the way out to the global world.
Oh my gosh. I could so relate as a fractional leader myself. I love the bite sized, like, you just need a little bit of who I am. And believe me, you don't want more than that.
Well, you do want more. You just, maybe you aren't ready for more. And that's okay.
That is okay.
We can start with the Halloween fun size bit and then go to the king size bar later.
Yes. Yes. What a perfect analogy for the time of year, for sure. It's hard. I don't know if you find this, but I find it very hard to hold back in terms of like, I know you only need a little bit, but I can't help keep like piling on because I want this so much for you.
Yeah. I very cringily describe it as pathological caring. I care. I can't turn it off. It's not going to turn off. It is definitely a strength and a weakness. I will keep trying, and that's okay. That's part of the
It's
charm.
okay. How are you balancing I'm also having this in the pathological caring of it all. I'm having the in that same struggle. How are you balancing multiple clients in that way and being able to prioritize who needs what at what time? Or is there enough care to go around?
There is a limit of caring, and I am very specific about good fit clients for that reason. I will absolutely refer out if I am not going to be able to do the things that you're trying to get done. So step one is setting us both up for success. If it's not a good puzzle piece, it's not a good puzzle piece. That's not a judgment thing. That's a you need X, Y, and Z. I'm really good at X and Y and ABC, but you need that Z. Here's the person that's going to get you Z. And that's counterintuitive because especially during a recession, we're like, I need money. I need my stuff. Yes, that's valid. But I find that then gets me referrals for people who are a good fit when I say, this is my bubble. As a generalist, very few things are outside of that bubble. And so it's really stage, communication, opportunity, game plan, and then color coding and ruthless prioritization. It's the juggling of the balls and understanding and being okay with sometimes things are going to need to fall a little bit, and where's too far and where's far enough, and clear communication and transparency. Kind transparency, right?
Ah, so true. Yes, the kindness of it all. Um, my
Color
one of my
coding and
clients,
highlighters.
yeah, one of my clients actually said to me that he can handle anything as long as it's up front. So like I in like figuring out our working relationship and getting into the flow of what we had going on. I missed a deadline by accident. I had my dates confused, and I totally missed a deadline. He was upset, rightfully so, totally rightfully so. And it's just like, yes to what you're saying. He's like, I don't like surprises, right? But if you weren't going to meet this deadline and you could tell me ahead of time that we were going to meet it, I would be totally fine with that. But it's the surprise of it being the deadline and then it not being met that is not okay. And that, yeah, so it's so hard. I hate disappointing people. And so letting them down of like, I'm not going to make this deadline is like heartbreaking for me, but it's so true. The kindness, it's actually more kind to be transparent and upfront. And I've gotten a lot better at it. But in those early days of starting this off and doing the fractional stuff, that was like one of my biggest hurdles for sure was remembering that actually kindness is the forecasting and the transparency of it all. So hats off to you for that. It's a tough out there. It's a tough one.
It is. There's a book recommendation. It's something about uncomfortable conversations. Um, that's the one.
Yeah, yeah, crucial, uncomfortable, all of the things. Conversations, how to talk to people. It's a tricky one. Always learning around that. In terms of where you are right now, looking for your next thing, I hope everybody's ears have perked up and you're all leaning in for what Leanne might be looking for next. But in terms of where you are now and with your fractionals, with looking for a job, what's sort of hard for you? What's a challenge? What's in your way?
Oh man, what's in my way? I think that if you were going to ask me in July what was in my way, it was that there weren't very many good fit opportunities open. And I think the world in July versus the world in September are two very different ones. And day to day, that changes. Is that I am not an entry level fit anybody in here kind of talent. And you have to have a specific type of role and a certain level of need that makes leadership level roles, first of all, a longer cycle, harder to fill, And it's just, there's just different stakes than if you're hiring someone who is going to write something that then you're going to edit 10 ways from Sunday, that you're going to, it's just a different puzzle piece. So um I think that that's part of it. And I think the other part is that I need to be as brave as you were reading my story from LinkedIn. I need to be as brave communicating about myself that way, honestly.
That's hard. It's so hard. I agree. I'm happy to read and amp you up all day because what you're doing is awesome, and I love the way you think. And I, like I said, I think very similarly in terms of the approach to marketing. And so, if you just want to take that clip and just,
I'm going to plot that on
use
my
it
website.
everywhere, do it. I'm here for it. I'm happy to support you in that way, because it is hard to talk about, or I find it hard to talk, and I get all blushy like when people like compliment me. I'm like, oh my gosh, shh, don't say it out loud. I might jinx it. Um, let's talk about you mentioned it, of the world being very different in terms of what was happening in July versus what's happening now, and we talked a little bit about this. I didn't have a plan, folks, and then Leanne came in and, like I said, spiced it up. And we're gonna get into it because it sounds like you're not the only one feeling this moment in time. I don't want to say new world order. I think it's just a moment in time. And I don't normally subscribe to this line of thinking of like, well, the market's just having a tough time, and so our marketing's just having a tough time. I usually can find something in that toughness to sort of still eke out the people who are still searching for the thing that my clients are trying to sell. But I feel like we're all experiencing this moment in time of actually, no, it's a little harder to eke out, and that's okay. And so talk to me about the difference between the world in July versus the world right now that you're experiencing.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a couple things. In my last role, I was in banking. And when you're in banking, you really start to get very sensitive to interest rates. You might have been sensitive to them anyways because of your own personal finance. But when your entire job is about marketing and what the new interest rate is it going to change? Is that going to impact our campaign? And when's the Fed meeting? And what are all these other volatility impacts? I am certainly not a finance expert. I have an MBA, but it was not in finance. I'm not that type of MBA. I'm the I'll help you build a small business type. So when you start to see that the interest rates are changing, as well as layered on top of seasonality, layered on top of an election year, and all these different things, I think that there is a lot of stuff that impacts how we go about marketing. So the world in July had there was a little bit of hiring in that June July period, which is kind of like a normal hiring time. But July and August, people are typically out on vacation, they're in and out, they're wrapping up a fiscal year, not ready yet to plan their next one. And then, there's a lot of housekeeping that happens in July. July is notoriously a low sales month for many, many industries, almost like globally. And so when we start to get into September, now we're backfilling roles. Now those people that left their role in June and July, we have to refill those roles. We have to we saw what our last year's money was, and now we know what our budget is, or we're starting to get, into budgeting season, and we're starting to be like, oh, these are the things we think we want to do. We're strategically planning for the next year. When the interest rates are cheaper, that means that it is so the Fed cut off 0.5%, which is larger. It is actually pretty significant. It doesn't seem significant, but it is in comparison to a quarter. So by cutting 50%, which is 25% more than they were anticipated to, that changes the margins within a bank. So the way that banks make money is they lend you money, you pay an interest rate, they hold on to people's savings, and those savings they pay you an interest rate. And that area in between those two rates is how they operate. That is essentially their operating budget. um, in their margin, right? So when they have margins that aren't going to put them into debt or over leveraged or, concern for problems, like big problems, like potentially a bank run, right? If people don't think the banks have money, they want to pull all their cash out, and then the banks don't have cash, but they have loans, and then that's really scary. That's why the FDIC exists. It's not, no one, don't run on your bank. It's not going to happen in the US. But when the banks have further space in that profit margin, they're a little bit more lax with their loans. It's easier to get a loan to start up your new business, to grow your existing business, or your investments change. You're just the way that the way that large or small internals finances look is more optimistic when interest rates are lower. The cost of money is lower, because debt can be a very valuable way to grow your company in a number of ways. The thing about economics, per the bank run concept, is it is hugely psychological. It is more psychological than it is objective data. And I think that people forget that. So when there's more optimism, because investors are like, oh, well, I can, the rate's lower. So, my stock performance is, may not be doing as well, but if I do this, then that. It's just, it signals an optimism of coming out of a recession, or just different things that make everyone feel like there's we can breathe, we can buy houses again, or we can, because home loans change, or, all these economic drivers, people's minds change how they perceive it. And so that I don't completely subscribe to a much larger thing that I am not qualified to speak upon. But this is kind of, a little taste of part of how it works. It's never that black and white. It is not so simple as, this one type of economics that has been described. But economics still is very, very psychological. So if a company thinks that they have more money, or they have more freedom, or if something goes wrong, that they could, do X, Y, and Z, then they're more likely to be able to hire. They're more likely to invest in their marketing. They're more likely to put up ads. They're going to spend differently. That was a long, long answer.
So in terms of what's happening with the Fed cutting, was it 0.5? 0.5, right?
Yeah.
Just so I'm so new to this, just so I'm sort of following along. It's actually I couldn't quite figure out if that's good for banks or bad for banks. If you just want to like oversimplify it for us, it sounds like it's not good for banks.
Well, if they can, because it's complicated, right? Because when the rates are higher, they have to pay higher on their deposits. So because if you have, the way that you attract people to make deposits is by paying them the interest rates. So like a large bank will automatically pay you the worst interest rates because they don't have to. They already have the leverage of investing in brand and advertising and stadiums and all of these things. But a regional bank has to compete on rates. So like they'll give you a higher rate for your deposits, and that means that they have to pay you more in order to get your dollars in the door. And that way that they can leverage out loans. And so, it's good for banks that the rates are coming down.
Okay.
It's good.
Okay.
The last 2 cents that I know about this is that when we talk about home loans, people think that their 30-year loan, it means that it's going to come up in 30 years. But statistically, very few people sit through the entire loan. Typically, people either move or refinance every 5 to 10 years. So when you think about like what happened 5 years ago or what happened 10 years ago, that's part of like the very complex cycle that I am poorly describing.
So in terms of the economics of what's happening right now, how do you see that impacting marketing. It sounds like since the interest rates are coming down, it's going to give companies a little bit more breathing room and essentially allow them to be able to invest more into their organizations versus feeling the crunch like they may have been.
Yes. Much better said than I
Okay.
was saying.
Okay.
That's the thing.
Okay.
If you get like really big answers from me that are a little bit of an
No,
overshared
That's
ramble.
why I'm here. No, that's why I'm here. I'm here to decipher. You're going to give us all the details, all the goody gooey goodness, and then I'm going to oversimplify it, and because I am not the expert and you are, so that's why you're here. And I really appreciate all of that lovely detail, because I think what's been happening for some of my clients is that everything feels like it's kind of slowed down. I don't want to say to a screeching halt, but it has drastically slowed down in terms of the lead volume and people really buying right now across the board. And so I'm curious now, with this, interest cut, are we going to start to see things pick up a bit more? Or is there other economic factors that we still need to take into consideration, such as the election, such as, just the uncertainty of, how AI is going to impact things? There's just sort of a lot going on right now. And I feel like everybody's tightening their belts a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think that we're ready yet for like a gross exhale. I don't think that everyone's really ready to like, oh, that was such a crazy ride. We're not there yet. We're not. The election is going to play a big part on how a lot of things go down, and I think that there's a lot of people that are very nervous, and that's I resonate with that. But moving on from the election being a big part of it is that Q3 is typically not the type of spending kind of shifts, right? There's two kind of buckets that I mentally think of when I think of Q3 and Q4. And that is shifting from budgeting season to we're not going to buy today, but we're going to buy in January. We've done our homework, we're doing all of our calls, we're sitting through all the stuff. It's the planning season. It's the how is the year gone season. It's the nothing net
Yep.
new season. And then it starts to move into consumerism. And oh, Halloween starts in August. Oh, Christmas stuff in September is up at Costco.
No.
It's been up for weeks. Why is there a tree when it's like 90 degrees out? I would love to know. Um, but it's that consumer push where we're not really thinking in a B2B sense, or putting our ducks in a row sense. That ducks in a row seasonality happens in January. So it's very industry specific, and it's very emotionally driven, and it's also it's back to that seasonality, is that people are preparing to make choices, but I don't think they're quite ready to make all of the choices. And the people that are making choices today, which is growing a lot, are the ones that like are very definitive about needing those needs. And being that definitive, we need this need, I personally, as a job seeker, find reassuring, because I don't want to join a company that is seeing all the same things I'm seeing and then have them lay me off 3 months later because they couldn't afford me. So I think that right now, the companies that are hiring are much more definitive and strong in their choices than they would have been 6 months ago. Because 6 months ago, it was still a little bit more of a gamble. It was like, are they or won't they cut rates? Are they, or what's going to happen next? It's much more, okay, this has been painful for us. We have a pain. We need a painkiller, not a vitamin.
Yeah. I have seen from a hiring perspective that the more executional folks, the managers, maybe even VPs are being hired. But it feels like from a higher level, and you mentioned this too, from a leadership standpoint, it feels like everybody's sort of holding their breath just yet, especially because there's such high turnover in those roles, that people just don't want to make any of those tough decisions at this very moment. So it does sound like some companies are hiring, but yeah, I'm not seeing a lot of job postings around the top levels at this very moment across the board. Across the board. Yeah.
Which reminds me of something I left unsaid was that when money's tight, companies are going to choose to pay the cheapest person to do as much as they can. And that's going to be those very entry level individual contributor jobs. Not all individual contributor ones, but entry level individual IC jobs. And that's because they're like, hey, we can't afford someone who knows more. What happens is when you try to get the intern to do CMO work, you get intern level results and it blows up in your face. And but you got to let people make that mistake. You got to let them see, hey, you're not going to get the results of your marketing because you invested in this revenue driver like it was sprinkles instead of the ice cream. It's the ice cream. You've got to invest ice cream money into things to get ice cream results.
I love ice cream. Oh. I actually just had a really good conversation with a potential client who is a CEO, and he's basically acting as the CMO, having never done any marketing, and he's hired a bunch of agencies, and he's like, they don't deliver. And it's like, and the great conversation we had was, well, what metrics are they coming back to you with? And he's like, well, like leads and cost per lead. And I'm like, that's because that's all they can see. So you need a bridge, which is that marketing leader, which isn't an intern, which isn't you, sir, who can build that bridge and help them see further down the funnel and give them the information they need to make smarter decisions on their side of what they can control, which is very little in the grand scheme of the full marketing funnel. So it was such an aha moment for him of like, oh my gosh, yes, I do need that person. And what I loved about his aha moment of whether it's me or somebody he was talking about potentially hiring internally, which could make a lot of sense for him. I'm not bothered either way. I just want him to have that person, was that he could actually hire full-time that marketing leader and then get fractional for everything else, right? Which seems to be the reverse of what people do generally. And I'm really glad he's thinking about it from that perspective, because you need one person full-time, or even, for us as, from a fractional standpoint, but in that seat of seeing the full picture end to end, pulling in the right experts and those levers to get to the results. But you can't just skip over that person, is what we're saying, to have those people execute stuff when you don't have somebody in the seat seeing the full picture. Like,
Yes, exactly. I've seen too many times where the first in-house person that smaller organizations hire is someone that they don't empower to do anything strategically. They use them as a workhorse. And if you're listening and your boss is saying, "Oh, you're such a workhorse. I'm so thankful for you." You need to have a frank and honest conversation about what your next steps are into like promotion or forward progression. Because if you're in workhorse mode, that means that you are on the hamster wheel. You are just putting out you're putting out line items and you're doing a checklist. And while I love checklists, I will speak all day about project management and how wonderful and beautiful we can make that. If your entire first hire in-house is only executing on tiny deliverables, you're going to get tiny results. You need to have them in a place where they can impact strategy and they can see and be informed enough about business needs to say, hey, here's how we get more with less. Here is the highest priority. You really need to do like XYZ so that we can do that. If you are empowering your in-house person, the person that you should trust the most, that is accountable to you and your organization for like their livelihood, if you can't trust that person with the strategy, then you are doing yourself a disservice that you can quickly change into being a much more powerhouse for revenue growth.
it's a very important hire, that first marketing hire. And in my experience, the people I've seen thrive in that seat have been sort of the Swiss Army knives like yourself, who can be more of that T shape, think strategically and high level, execute on certain areas, and then bring people in to support. Would you, in terms of that and your skill set, let's talk about that for a second. In terms of your skill set, what would you say, like when you come in, where do you sort of start, and the things that, and then like so you start strategically, what does that mean for you? And then where do you start executing before you bring people in, or do you immediately bring people in? So.
Well, that's a great question. So there's a couple things that came through my head as you're speaking. Was one is learning. One mistake that I think too many people make is just making assumptions about thinking that they know, and you don't. You don't. You gotta give credibility to the people that are there, and you have to earn their trust. Just because you were hired does not mean you walk in with the keys to the kingdom. You have to earn that. And in different size organizations, that looks completely different. Now, here we're talking about a small organization. The amount of time that you have to learn in a small organization that has one marketer, very small. You have 30, 60, 90 days of actions that you need to start to like hit the ground running. Things that you can do that are just quick wins, social. All you have to do to get a quick win on social is bring the customers along for the investigation of the organization. What I mean by that is you want to bridge the gap, not just between the leadership and the execution. You want to bridge the gap from the customers to the culture and the personality and brand. And so the quick win there would be, hey, what if we start a live webinar? Okay, you set your leadership up for success. Or if they're not ready for that and that's going to take more buy-in, you say, hey, can we record a conversation? And then when you say something really smart, I want to use that sound bite and I want to put it on social so people can see your specific genius. And that way it's recorded. We can run it through compliance. You aren't on the hook for saying something you shouldn't have said. But when people hear you passionately caring about this thing that you said that you're a genius about, why wouldn't they want to work with you? And that's that quick win, is bridging the gap from the inside to the outside. So I'm very much a social first. And when I say social first, I mean organic channels as well, because those are the cheapest, right? In order to get that conversation with that CEO and make it look nice and put it online, that's going to cost you $30. $30.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Easy.
not a huge campaign. That's not like a large commitment. That's a test the water. That's a, did they even know that you were like this? Because I'm impressed. This is amazing. Let's chase this thread. And then be willing to be wrong and being open to the feedback you get. So it's a little bit of A and B and really playing that 4D chess. And that sounds so cliche, but you have to get wins. You have to get quick wins, and you have to go on this journey. And when you realize that it's a journey instead of a checklist, it starts to feel better and it starts to build relationships, because at the end of the day, your critical role in any department is to build relationships between other departments, between higher level people and lower level people. And you can't progress unless you're willing to play nice in the sandbox.
That's the adulting of you. I love that. We gotta play nicely in the sandbox. We all gotta get along. I love this because I'm actually experiencing something very similar that I'm doing with my fractional clients, of where it's two-pronged, of like giving yourself enough time to learn the business and understand how people are buying and what's the flow of that and what's important to the customer, while trying to find those opportunities of quick wins. And those are actually two things that I immediately did. And so for one client, I did an interview with him and I said, we're going to go through your process and your story and like who you are and why you're different, because he's a coach. And we're going to record it and then we're going to take sound bites from it. And so we have already done the recording and now we're getting everything ready for social. And it's like, it's so impactful, like to hear from him of why him, and the customer stories that he has to tell all day, every day is just, it was so much fun too. I was like, I could do this all day. This is awesome. And then for another client, we actually are doing a 20-minute podcast every week. So before we do our weekly check-in, we have 20 minutes where we just unpack a topic, and we get to show his side, right? As a lawyer, like, you're buying his expertise, and so you need to get to know him as a person. And so it's just a great way to be able to do that. And so I'm looking forward to setting that up too. So it's, yes, I totally agree that these are wonderful quick wins you can do for pretty much any client, while also taking a minute to understand that funnel and how to bring customers in, and what the nurture sequences are going to be, and how data is flowing through from one end to another, and understanding where people are coming from, whether it's organic or if you are doing paid, what paid channels are working or not working, and the longer game stuff while getting those social quick win. Yes, thank you for validating me, Leanne.
It's so valid. I've seen it work time and time again. And the reason why is because people want to know who they're working with. And per your point earlier about the person who was like, I don't want to be surprised by disappointment. No customer wants to be caught off guard thinking that a company is one thing when it's really another. And the more that you can like build that organic, hey, I saw this ad and then I went to the website and oh my God, not only is it the same thing I thought it was going to be, it's even better. That's the feeling you want. That's the
Yes.
gold. But when they see your ad and they get to your website and it's a ghost town, they're like, I mean, if anything, it brings doubt. And so while many companies can get by with just like one really spiffy, like small website, you do have to have some sort of digital proof. And if you don't have a website, then have reviews on G2 or have like, just you have to decide where you're going to build your castle and then create roads that lead into it.
The social proof is so key. It's the surround sound that you got to build. It's no longer a single thing. It's when people do research, they end up, it's a rabbit hole, right? Right. So for my coaching client, we completely pivoted. We were trying to go after one area where he can go and facilitate like a team building activity, and then from there he can get a couple clients, which is really great, but it's such a harder sell, and at the end of the day he needs coaching clients. And so I was finally able to pivot him to say like, listen, we're going to go after coaching, executive coaching keywords. We're going to build your brand around executive coaching, because that's really at the heart of like what you do. And this is, more people are looking for this thing than they are this thing. And he trusted me, and we pivoted. And within the first week, we had somebody come in, see the ad, and then they went down the dark rabbit hole. They went to LinkedIn, they went to Instagram, they read the website, and then they like had one discovery call and immediately hired. Like, it was that quick, because to your point, it all synced up across the board of what we were saying in terms of his messaging and what this potential client was looking for too. So that surround isn't just to like bring people in. It's also, to your point, that validation piece of, even once they get hooked, they're going to go search for everything else. So it all better be buttoned.
Yeah. I mean, there's too many scams out there, and there's too many like people in a time where we're all feeling a little squeezed financially. People aren't just throwing their money at anything, but also this is just how business is done now. It's how the buying journey looks now. People aren't just being like, yeah, I poked over the cubicle and Joe Schmo said that this was the guy. They're still going to go home and Google you. They're still, or ChatGPT you, whatever they're going to do. They're going to look on multiple platforms and see that you are who you say you are and that you fit their specific needs. And if they can't find out if you fit their specific needs, they're going to try to reach out to you. And then if you are sucky, very proud of my word choice there. If you are not wonderful in how they reach out and how you communicate back, or how long it takes you to provide an answer to their query, they're just going to look somewhere else, because there is a somewhere else.
Yeah, there's always a somewhere else. Let's go back to talking about the difference between what was going on in July in terms of it being a slower month generally, just because it's just summer and that's just where it is, and it's totally true. It's slow across the board in July and August. I do think there's this push that happens, and there's generally this push that happens in September, between September to Thanksgiving for the U.S. folks, where there's like this last hot try from a marketing perspective, and then there's that planning phase through the rest of the year to gear up for January, because to your point, it gets very consumery. But I will say, to my point earlier, and I want your thoughts on this, that it does feel like this particular Q3 and Q4 is cool, right? People aren't spending. So yay that interest rates got cut, but at the same time, I don't see anybody being like, yay, go. Because to your point, there's no exhale. There's no exhale that's happening. Do you see the exhale coming? Like, do you think like in January, things are going to pick up and people are going to feel better and there is going to be an exhale? Or are we in this for are we tightening our belts for a while here based off of your experience in the finance industry? Sort of your crystal ball.
I'm not expert enough to have a crystal ball. All I have is my anecdotal personal opinion. And once again, I am not someone that you should ever make your investments according to. I am not qualified to tell you about, where you should put your money unless it's in marketing. I can tell you that, but I am not like someone that tells you where you should invest or buy or get a loan or anything like that. What I can say is that it's a very complicated answer. And what instead I would encourage people to do is, instead of trying to read the crystal ball, I would encourage them to make the choices that they know they wouldn't regret either way. And I would encourage them to say, hey, no matter what happens 6 months from now, this is a choice that I need to make today. And I think that is that when you mitigate any of the possibilities, and you're like, look, no matter what, as a marketer, I need to do some brand ads because no one's going to know about me in 6 months if I totally cut this off. You have to make those decisions that are business choices instead of trying to predict the future. And you can make your best models, you can do your best forecast, you can listen to all the pundits, and you can switch TV channels all day long. But your business is not reliant on it might be reliant on quite a lot, right? But at the same time, you have to run your business today, and you have to make choices today that are going to make it so that you exist tomorrow and the next day and the day after that. So is today a day when you should grow at all costs? God, if you have a trust fund that has no limit, sure, go for it. I don't know if I would ever really say that that's the best way to go, even if it wasn't a tight economic situation. You should always be able to say, this is a choice that we're making because it focuses and it is accountable to these objective known results based on data, based on revenue, and then make those choices and go full force. You have to be brave with the choices you make in marketing. If you half-ass it or you're wimpy about it, the customers are going to feel the wimpiness, and they're going to be like, look, if you don't even believe it, why should we?
Oh my gosh. I have so much to unpack there. Let's first talk uh, about brand. No, even better. Let's pull up from that and talk about the things that you, as marketers, in your position, like from your experience, Leanne, in marketing, what are the things that you would recommend that people pay attention to when it comes to making these decisions? You mentioned brand, so that's why I want to go there. But before we go there, are there other things where you're like, consider the importance of this thing and not immediately just feeling like it's got to go because things are a little tough or really tough?
I mean, there's core concepts that you should always do no matter what. And I know that sounds like it's a paradox, right? Because you should never just take a playbook and that be the playbook, and you're doing it just because it's a checklist and it's a core concept. You should never do things just because someone said you should do it. You should do it because it's right for your business, because it's right for your customers. But that's the core concept you should always do. Do what's right for your customers. Do the things that your customers want you to do, so that they know who you are, they have the opportunity to fall in love with you, and then it's really super duper easy for them to just give you the money they want to give you. Those are the core concepts that you should do no matter what your playbook is, no matter what your strategy is, no matter what levers you're pulling. Your customers need to know you exist. They need to fall in love with you, and then they need to give you money easily in a way that makes them feel good about having done it.
Now you're making it sound so simple and
It's
easy.
so hard.
It's so hard. It is so hard. I feel like building brand, and that's why people don't do it, because it's so hard. It feels so hard, especially when you can't see the immediate impact of it. But what I love what you're saying in relation to that and about and why I thought talking about brand was so important is because when things get a little bit tough and people aren't willing to spend money, the one thing you can do that's actually doesn't have to be, I love your 2 cents. I would more than your 2 cents. I love your opinion on this. Brand doesn't have to be this big, splashy, expensive thing. It just has to be thoughtful, in line with what your customers need, and consistent.
Consistency is it.
Consistency. And there's lots of ways to do that, right? We mentioned social. I'm going to mention one, and then I want to hear what else you got. My other one in terms of consistency that I think is really easy is a newsletter. I think they're underrated. I think there's a lot you can do with a really thoughtful newsletter that can go a long way for your customers if you have a good database to work with. I just found out that one of my potential customers doesn't even have a CRM, and my heart cried a little in that, because I know that they've done a lot in terms of building a customer base. So that's one that I'm thinking of. What are some that you're thinking of that are sort of this low hanging fruit of brand building?
When I think of brand building, I think of the people who have a brand but don't have a brand, right? If you look in your community, there's somebody who's always like the unofficial, unelected mayor of the community. Everybody knows that person. Everybody does. And you're like, how do you know that person? Like, how do you know It's because they build relationships one by one, thoughtfully and caringly, over time, consistently. And so when I think of a brand, I'm like, how do we do that? How do we become the mayor of this niche? How do we become the mayor of estate planning in this region who can come see us? How do we become the mayor of blah 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 blah? And so, to your point, a newsletter. I at one point I wasn't in charge of the newsletter, but they didn't have like a great CRM. They were still building out their CRM, but they had a huge list of over 20 years of customers. And I was like, you need to send a newsletter once a week. It doesn't have to be great. It just has to be like, this happened. Here's how to get flights. And they got leads like immediately from the very first newsletter, and then consistently 1 to 2 leads a week for free. I mean, it's really, if you take the cost of the labor of putting together a newsletter, okay, that took what, an hour? Like, you aren't reinventing the wheel. It's not like a brand new concept that no one's heard of. It's a newsletter. And then how much did you pay for your email software? Okay, $30 a month. Once again, we're back to the cheap, scrappy ways of building relationships, because people don't care how much you spent to make that relationship happen. They care how you made them feel. They care that you cared. And if you are caring by doing if you have a list of people that were old customers and you just pick up the phone, you're like, hey, how's it going? What do you care about? How are things? What could we have done better? Hey, that's great feedback. Is there a way that we can partner on this and I can share that publicly? Okay, that's how you build a relationship. You make the one-to-one connections. Now, that doesn't scale forever. That's really great if you have an existing customer list. If you do not have an existing customer list, or you don't have a community, or you have something that's grown stale, then you start to be like, who's my ICP? Who are the people that I think my hypothesis is that they're going to like our stuff, and that these are the people I'm actually chasing? And you find 20 of those people, and you pick up the phone and you have a conversation with them, or you invite them on a podcast, or you bring them in. And the very first thing I would say that no matter what size organization you have, you need to have a path flow of having one-to-one conversations that are a part of your marketing foundation, whether it's as a product manager, marketing manager, and that's, your competitive analysis, that's your research, that's your persona modeling, whatever it is. Somebody in your organization needs to be having these conversations on a recurring, regular, intentional basis in a way to evolve alongside your ideal people. And from there, you can do so much with it. It's content, it's feedback, and it's anecdotal. And so what I'm not saying, because there's always a disclaimer, what I'm not saying is that you change your entire business model because one guy that bought from you 20 years ago said one thing. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you take it with a grain of salt and then you test that and you see if a lot of people feel that way too.
Yeah, it's definitely a qualitative, multiple conversations thing. You don't want to just talk to one person and then change. You want to definitely get a sense from multiple people. It's why I love podcasting, because I feel like I get to hear a bunch of different perspectives on where marketers are coming from and what's hard right now and how they're tackling some of these issues. And I get to hear it firsthand. And I get to take those anecdotes, to your point, and then find the data within those of then testing my own marketing to see, okay, based off of multiple conversations I've had, let me see what I can do with this and how that resonates with my audience. And that's really been super wonderful and powerful in my own journey with podcasting and building relationships. I think podcasting is definitely a wonderful way to do it. If you can do it thoughtfully and in a relationship building way there's nothing worse than somebody on their podcast and then immediately after them giving you a pitch slap. So that definitely needs to be the intention of the journey of, to your point, building those relationships and getting the feedback in a really thoughtful way and being able to then use it that betters your efforts, not necessarily for the people that you talk to, but for the people you want to engage with in the future. And yes to that. I could talk to you all day, Leanne. I loved this journey that we went on, from talking about where the current climate is and how the world has changed in just a few months, to how that's impacted how we market, to thinking about what can we do in the next few months to not have any regrets in terms of how, what's best for our business right now, working within that, and then paying attention as we get more data to then iterate on our marketing efforts as the world, terrible saying, but as the world turns. So thank you. Thank you so much for your insights. I recognize that you're not a financial expert, but man, do you know a lot, and was it so helpful to hear how those interest rates are going to be, will be helpful. The time will come, and while it might not feel right now, it's a little glimmer of hope, and I'm grateful for it. So thank you so much. Before we close out, Leanne, you are more than a marketer, and I would love to know, it's September. We got 3.5 months left of the year, 2024. Personally, what are you most looking forward to as we close out the year?
Man, I am looking forward to so much. And despite all of this uncertainty, I have no doubt that there is a bright future for all of us. What I'm looking forward to most in the next few months is all of those silly, mundane things that I enjoy every single day. I love walking outside and hearing the wind in the palm trees. I love, even when it's foggy, I'm like, oh, that's water from the ocean. I'm so lucky to live where I am. And I get really nerdy about like trees and like the cycle of life and like nature and stuff. So like I love fall as much as I love summer or spring. Maybe not spring, it's got too many allergies. But I just I would say that I'm just always looking forward to tomorrow, as much as I look forward to today or this afternoon. I'm your friendly golden retriever little marketer over here, just loving life.
In the moment. Oh, what we all could take from that, of just stopping and smelling the roses and living in the moment. Leanne, I'm so grateful. Thank you for joining. Where can people find you? They're looking for a marketing leader. They need somebody who's a Swiss Army knife. Where are you?
I am on LinkedIn far too much. It's the best way to find me is on LinkedIn. Just to clarify, Leanne, last name D as in dog, OW, or like Dow Jones, except it's Dow-Weimer. So LinkedIn is the best way to find me.
We'll have, if you're on LinkedIn, just click on her name and head on over there and DM her. Do it right now. Just to have
always
a
slide
conversation,
into
just
my
to say
DM.
hi. Just say hi. Do that. And if you are not on LinkedIn, then head on over there and send her a message. She also has a wonderful podcast called Marky G. So fun. Definitely check that one out. And we'll have those links in the comments below. Thank you for hanging out with us. As always, this episode was brought to you by MKG Marketing, the digital marketing agency that helps complex brands like cybersecurity get found via SEO and digital ads. It's hosted by me, Carrie Gard, CEO and co-founder of MKG Marketing. Music mix and mastering done by Snappy. And if you want to be a guest, slide into my DMs. I'd love to have you on the show. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you.